In the following video, we're going to discuss the disability rights movement. Stars Christian Hernandez, Zach Langford, and Tim Huang. Please enjoy. Thank you. Ed Roberts, born January 23, 1939, is often called the father of the disability rights movement. Even though he contracted polio at the age of 14, 2 years before the sulk, he spent 18 months in the hospital, sleeping in an iron lung, and returned home paralyzed, where he survived by frog breeding. Ed Roberts attended the San Mateo College and then moved on to UC Berkeley. He barely got in due to his physical incapabilities, and while the years passed, he made a program for people with disabilities that later on turned into the Caldwell Residence Program. Judy Heumann is an American disability rights activist, recognized leader in the disability community. She works with the NGO, the non-governmental organizations, and the governments that have produced contributions since the 1970s to develop the human rights legislation. And by doing this, there's been policies benefiting children and adults with disabilities. Her contributions extend to the reach of the independent living movement all around the world. She was born in 1997. The Architectural Barriers Act of 1968 was the first efforts to ensure access to the building environment. It was an act of Congress enacted by Lyndon B. Johnson, which built buildings that were alternate or leased with funds, maintaining accessibility guidelines.
The Rehabilitation Act of 1973 was a federal legislation grant which supported the qualified individuals with disabilities by supporting their employment, independent living, and client assistance. It also protects these disabled people from discrimination. Furthermore, the grant also gives money to states that are willing to support a wide range of services designed to help these individuals with disabilities prepare for and engage in a gainful employment. The Disabilities Rights Education and Defense Funds was founded in 1979 by an alliance of parents and children with disabilities. The DREDF is a law and policy center dedicated to advancing and protecting the civil rights of adults and children with disabilities. Some discriminations, such as unable to be employed, special education, government facilities, government programs, health care, housing, public accommodation, transportation, and voting, were all protected by the DREDF. ADAP stood for American Disabled for Accessible Public Transit. It was founded in 1983 in Denver, Colorado, and it was known for its direct but nonviolent actions. They worked 7 long years to make transportation accessible for the disabled. One method included blocking the roads, in which some went to jail for. After achieving their goal, in 1990 of July, ADAP now stood for American Disabled for Attendant Programs today. It was to fight to get people out of the institution. Today, ADAP has no more acronym, however, they are still existing today.
The Gallaudet Uprising, also known as the Deaf President Now movement, was a protest fought by the students, alumni, and staff. They weren't happy that Elizabeth Zenser was chosen as president rather than the 2 deaf candidates. One of them was highly anticipated to be the first deaf president. Another reason why the students protested was because the school has a history of being a school for deaf students. In the end, the Board of Trustees gave in to the 4 demands of the protesters, one of them that made Zenser and Jane Spillman, the chairman, resign, allowing Dr. I. King Jordan to become the first deaf president. Another protest that followed 2 years later was Capitol Crawl on March 22, 1990, outside the Capitol in Washington, D.C. The protesters included those that were disabled, which included physical and mental disabilities, and also activists that supported those who are disabled. The protesters were pushing for the bill ADA to be passed by senators in Congress, which would give the disabled their own civil rights. They literally crawled on the steps of the Capitol, which is why it got its name. The senators felt sympathy for these protesters, and the protest proved to be successful. ADA, the short name of the act, protects those with disabilities. ADA describes one with a disability as a physical or impairment that limits those from participating in activities they may want to do. It basically grants those with disabilities the same opportunities in purchasing the same items or employment. The Americans with Disabilities Act was signed on July 26, 1990 by George Bush, the senior one, not the other one. It was modeled after the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which banned discrimination based on race, sex, religion, color, and nationalism. The act that was passed was the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act in 1990, or the short name is IDEA. This act protects the rights of those who are disabled, and it guarantees free, appropriate public education. This grants special services to those that are disabled in schools, special services, which can include physical ones, speech therapy, or occupational ones. These are based off an IEP, or an individualized education program based on what kind of disabilities a person may have.